Wrecking machine. I'll take it.
Are you sure you're not interested? I was like, don't ask me again.
And it's a bad hair day too.
So she's like, scream for me, and then it's just that silence.
It was a good risk to take, and it was great.
Boom! I'm gonna try to give you a friend, and then I was like,
I wish you had like a granny mask.
That would be so cool, or like a ghost uniform.
And everybody was like totally freaked out.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Kia ora. Hello.
Hello, Mark.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. I am Mark Sugiyama from Eclectic Arts, based here in Seattle, Washington. Thank you so much for joining me today on this Tuesday, March 9th, 2021. And as I was just talking with my guest pre-show, it's so kind of crazy that we're overlapping now in terms of time from a year ago during this pandemic lockdown period. And it just kind of trips me out to think about, like, so what was I doing last year? Oh, that's right. In about a week, that's when everything started closing down, and you didn't know which end was up. And in some ways, we still don't know which end is up, but we're doing the best we can with what we got. And again, I thank you so much for taking the time to join me. A few housekeeping things, as always. Coming up, as of about this time last week, I didn't think I was going to have too many things going on this week, but luckily for me, things have changed, and light is shined on my schedule, or whatever you want to call it. So starting tomorrow at noon, I have Bara Hari, which is an amazing musician from Los Angeles. She will be joining me at noon Pacific Standard Time. And then on the same day at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Courtney Cox from the Iron Maidens will be stopping by to talk about guitar shredding and everything else she does. If you saw the interview with her counterpart, Nikki Stringfield, a couple of weeks ago, only seemed right to have Courtney come on and talk about her role in the band as the other guitar player. So that's at 2 p.m. tomorrow. And then on Thursday morning at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, I have The Treatment coming to talk about their new album. They are a hard rock band from the UK. So if you like things, no frills, like AC/DC type of stuff, that's what they deliver. And so I'm looking forward to talking to them at 9 a.m. on Thursday. And then just confirmed at noon p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Thursday, I have Rachel A., who is a fantastic singer-songwriter from Colorado, joining me. She is also the better half of Dave Preston, for those of you that know Dave from his work with Jake Shimabukuro. So she'll be talking to me about her new single that's coming out, and that is on noon on Thursday. And then I believe Friday I get a break, if there is such a thing. And then Saturday, the Fun Table Sessions return, the March edition. This will be round, I want to say 22 overall. It'll be round number 3 for 2021. I have 3 guests that are scheduled to join me. One has been with me before. One is brand new. And then I have another guest who has not done an interview yet, but she will be joining us. And I've done that twice in the past, where I had somebody join a Fun Table session first. And if you're not familiar with those, that's basically what I call, instead of a round table, I call it a fun table, because it's, it's supposed to be fun. And we just talk about all kinds of random things. It's kind of like a virtual happy hour session with creatives and artists that I've interviewed before. Sometimes, again, I make exceptions. So if you want to join us, it's always fun when people have questions and comments in the chat, and we just kind of go with it. So again, topics that vary from all kinds of silly things. And you do not need to be someone that drinks alcohol to partake in the Fun Table sessions. We just try to have a good time and have some levity, especially during this time. I think it's really needed. So that's what my week is looking like. And I want to thank Steve and Dina for making some sizable contributions and donations to what I do. And I always need to put the banner up because I'm bad at that. So if you feel so inclined to make a tip or a donation, there's the PayPal Me link. It's always in the description on the YouTube channel. Actually, every video, it's in the description, as well as the Facebook description as well. So only if you're so inclined and if you're in a position to do so. It greatly helps me provide these streaming services because they are not free. And I love what I do and I'm passionate about it. But in all reality and transparency, I do have a survival job. So anything, any dollar helps. And again, only if you're so inclined and if you feel inclined to do so. So again, you can find those descriptions in the YouTube video pages and also on Facebook. So I'm going to take that off right now. All right. My guest today is an actor, writer, producer, and director. Her documentary film, American Birthright, will screen during the Seattle Jewish Film Festival starting March 10th, which is tomorrow, through March 13th. You can purchase tickets at seattlejewishfilmfestival.org. Please welcome to the Eclectic Arts Virtual Studio, Becky Tahel.
Hooray! I'm here with sweatpants on and no one can tell.
Hi, Becky. How are you?
I am fabulous. It's such an honor to be here. You have such a busy week. I'm so pleased that I could sneak myself into your busy schedule. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And yeah, it's in this case, it's good to be busy. Okay. And I'm noticing that you're freezing for right now.
Yeah, it happened a couple times.
Okay. But you're back now. Seems like we're okay.
We're going to get through it.
Okay. We'll just roll with it. So
yeah.
One thing I've learned from having the wonderful opportunity to talk to different directors and actors and producers over the last year is that the one common thing they've all told me is that whatever they started with isn't necessarily what they ended up with their projects. And can you speak to that? Is that something similar that happened with your project?
Oh God, absolutely. I started out 6 years ago with this just divine insight. I felt like it was my Elizabeth Gilbert's big magic moment where she talks about all these ideas kind of floating in their potential state. And then out of nowhere, I said, oh, maybe I should make a movie about interfaith marriage. Like, who picks that topic so randomly? My sister had just got always raised to believe that, you know, to marry a Jew is the sort of ideal. Did I freeze or did you hear me there?
You're okay, yeah.
Okay, great. So that was something that we were always sort of told since we were kids. So when that happened, I suddenly, my ears and my soul sort of perked up and said, this is a really interesting topic. Pursue it. That was the start. 6 years later, the film took a complete turn. It was about halfway through where I realized that the topic and the theme that I started out making was producing me and sort of pivoting me in a different direction. And I think that happens a lot with this medium. Documentaries are real life, right? That's the ideal. And I believe that as soon as you start turning the cameras on and being as authentic and real as you can be in front of them, life happens. And it's not as you script it because it's real life. So yeah, halfway through, I was hitting a dead end with the topic. I couldn't crack the truth for myself. We were just talking about how truth is so difficult to find these days, but truth just in general is tricky to find. And for me around this topic, I was not getting it. I couldn't figure out where I was going. 2.5 years into it, I was asking all of these people questions and I just did not have clarity. And that's when it hit me that the movie I was making was not actually the movie. The deeper question was lying dormant within this initial question. So I started out asking, why marry Jewish, right? Like, why marry from within my same faith? And I realized that the real question I was walking with was, why be that faith to begin with? Right? Like, why be Jewish? If I could answer why I choose or if I choose to be Jewish, then that would help me to solve that first question of why marry somebody who is of that same faith and belief. So yeah, documentaries are tricky. And post-production was even trickier, but it was very rewarding. And again, 6 years later, we finally birthed the baby. And I am so excited for people to see this crazy, wild journey of a couple different questions being asked and answered and new questions arising.
Yeah, and I can tell you that I kind of did things not really backwards, but basically I looked at the programming for the festival and I saw your film and the little synopsis was interesting enough for me to go watch it. So I didn't even watch the trailer or anything. I just started watching it.
Ooh.
And so initially, based on the synopsis, I was like, oh, so this is about interfaith marriage and what the questions that come up. And then as I watched them, like, just like what you said, it's like, well, no, that's not really what this is. That's like the catalyst to what your personal journey became. And it's amazing to me that over a 6-year period, you amassed all this footage and the story and everything else to, end up with this end result.
Yeah.
Did you ever get to a point where, like you said, a few years into it, that you started to shift, that became more of a personal truth and journey? Did you ever get to a point where you're thinking like you didn't even want to like remove the interfaith piece completely from this?
I don't think I ever really thought I could get rid of that inciting incident. I think, again, to be true to my process, I had to stick with that. And yes, like, by the way, in post-production and in my journey, I had many mentors and other fellow writers and directors who suggested I not do this or do that, that it was confusing, that potentially having two different big questions being posed in a film might confuse the audience. And I just didn't feel like it would be right of me to strip away what really began as my burning question. And I think that's true to life. You start asking one question and you realize that you're really asking other questions, but you still need to set up that foundation. And I think, you know, my feeling around this film now and the feedback that I get is that people are inspired to ask their own big questions. And so if I don't have that initial big question, then what about all those initial big questions that the audience has? I don't want to, you know, sort of like gloss over that or say that that first question isn't as important. And by the way, by the end of the movie, I answer that initial question. So everything sort of gets tangled up. And by the end, I put the pieces back together in their rightful place, which I was terrified to do, by the way. I was literally terrified to answer that question because I felt like if I came out at the end with an answer, I might offend people. I'm like the people pleaser, you know, over here. And that was something I struggled with and decided, and I actually had a rabbi on screen ask me, are you willing to put the result into the film? And I remember thinking to myself, can I do that without offending people? And I do that. And I think I do it in a way that's true to me and in a way that, you know, it's not like you have to be wrong for me to be right. I can be in my truth and in truth, and you can have a different opinion and choose differently, but I had to honor my answer, and that, you know, that's in there as well at the end of the film.
Yeah, no, I think that was actually a really smart choice to do it that way, because for me as a viewer, it made sense that I really like the transparency that as you're going through this journey, without giving too many spoilers away, that you actually ended up with more questions than answers at one point, and you could tell that you're thinking, by doing this, this, and this, and traveling somewhere, I'm going to finally get these answers that I've been looking for. And then in reality, you really didn't get them. And that seems much more realistic to me than like, oh yeah, it's all, you know, Disney and cookie cutter and everyone's happy. And it wasn't that at all. Eventually it becomes happy, but you find you know, what works best for you. Right. And but I thought that's what I think that was almost like the linchpin for me of like, this is something that I can connect to, because you're actually showing things in a very raw state that some people wouldn't want to do.
I appreciate hearing that. I think, you know, being messy is human. And I the more I lean into it, the more I'm able to create content and not feel like I have to be perfect. Like, you know, when I'm invited to moderate or to be a part of panels, I always have that initial thought to myself of, why me? What do I have to offer? And I don't think I'm the only person that has these thoughts. You know, we all have that imposter syndrome. It's so human and normal. And it helps me to lean into that. I remember like one of my first big public speaking gigs, I was terrified and I named it. It's like name it to tame it. I just got up there in front of the audience and said, "Ooh, I am nervous." And as soon as I called it, I felt way less nervous. And I could be really honest and transparent about it. And I feel like that's kind of the theme as well with my content and with this film, is that if I tried to make it perfect, I could never really stand behind it, could never really properly represent it. It wouldn't be who I am. And now I'm inspired to make that sort of content. I'm so glad, Mark, that you resonated with that, because I questioned whether that would be connective enough and strong enough if I were the curious, sort of a little bit vulnerable, authentic in my mess kind of protagonist. Would that be enough to follow? And it turns out that people connect to that authenticity more than somebody who's figured it out and checking things off their list really quickly and is super neat and buttoned. So I really appreciate that feedback.
Yeah, no, again, it's I like things that are not nipped and tucked. And I think during this last year, I think other people
oh God, yeah.
It resonates with them because of that. Obviously, this is not something we're used to or have been a part of. And then when you see someone going on in your film on a very personal journey and realizing that maybe my journey's not that, but I've been on other roads that are very similar to that, was like, I think I figured things out, and you realize I didn't figure shit out.
Nothing. In fact, I have more of a mess, and how cool that's life. You know, let's continue to to wrestle with it and try to find the sense and the truth. Yeah.
Yeah, and during the course of the film, you talked to many faith scholars. I'm just kind of curious, how did you, obviously one was one of your personal folks from well back in the past, but
Right.
how did you find all of those folks to contribute to the film?
Man, if I made this movie now, it'd be so different. I reached out to people I knew and asked for opinions. And I think that's sort of, what you do in the beginning when you have an idea. And I didn't realize that in the Jewish world, in the rabbinical world, that there are so many rabbis, various denominations of Judaism, and all sorts of speakers and scholars and levels and tiers of people that are it was a ton. I had a spreadsheet of people, and I sort of just reached out really naively, not with any precedence. I didn't have a project before. They didn't know me from the next girl, and people were so generous with their time. I was able to get some great interviews with some really awesome people, but it was purely people passing me around, people saying, "You got to meet Becky. She's got a really honest film. I think you're going to love it." And that was sort of it. And hopefully that's what happens with the film itself in its film festival stage, is that it's a word of mouth thing. And I think that is the most honest. I didn't have a great calling card or a reel or a different film to show them. I had a bunch of short film stuff that I had done. But yeah, people just passed me around. And I think when they heard that I was taking on interfaith marriage, like there was no other documentary that sort of did what I was doing, that really piqued their interest. They were, I think, one, sort of curious, like, how are you doing this? And what is your message? That was a lot of the questions that I was receiving was, how are you going to end this thing? What statement are you making? And I felt like that was kind of a weird question to ask a filmmaker who's in process. Like, I think maybe they didn't think that I was being as honest about, no, this is real time. I don't have an answer. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm documenting that process. But the ones that got it and really saw me are the ones that you see in the film. And they helped me along the way. They're people I still reach out to. I still keep in touch with. They forever changed my life. Or now, for some, I create content for them now. For others, they're like family. I stay with them when I'm in Israel or wherever they are. And yeah, it's quite a journey if I think back to really how these people came together. And it was the perfect cast, really.
Yeah, I was going to mention that for people that when you get a chance to see the film, there's so many different faith scholars, and sometimes they have different opinions of things. But there's also a lot of truth to what they say that goes beyond just the film, that goes beyond even just the Jewish faith. So for someone like myself, it's like I start thinking about things that they were bringing up, and I love that kind of thing. When I start, getting educated basically and start questioning things, so then my brain starts to percolate, and that's when I'm like, okay, now I'm kind of vested inside of this film, because there's so much going on, not only with how you told the story and everything that's going on, but then just on a bigger picture, there's other things I could relate to.
I'm so happy that you found that sort of connective tissue for you, because that was big for me. I didn't want it to be like a Bible camp film or just a Jewish piece, and I'm so pleased that people from other faith traditions also connect to it. I remember also wanting to open it up early on to make it not just about my Jewish journey, but to interview a bunch of my other millennial friends and talk about all the religions and figure out how we all relate to interfaith marriage. And I thought that would make it more successful. And at some point, I realized that to really narrow it into which is the hardest thing for us to do, right? To like figure out what that niche is and stick to that and keep that lane pretty narrow and straight, that would help not just me, but the film. So that was a fear of mine, that it would really not connect with a lot of other people. And I'm really happy to hear that it is doing that.
Yeah, no, again, for me, it absolutely connected. And that's one of the reasons why I tried to reach out to you as quickly as possible to set something up. Because I was like, I want to talk to this creative behind this film, because it connected that much that I wanted to reach out. So
I love that. I'm so honored. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, and here we are. So it's all good. I'm curious too that since it was a 6-year process of getting this film together, and again, some of the other fine folks that I've had a chance to talk to, it seems like there's always stumbling blocks. There's barricades. There's from financial things, locations, just a multitude of things. From your timeline of 6 years, what were some of the things that you had to overcome to eventually get this film made?
God, there's a few. If I were to really sort of give you the biggest benchmarks of what were in my way or what also were a part of my way, the first one is like, is this the movie I want to make? And being in LA, and I'm looking out at the palm trees and the neighbors and directors and actors that are walking, whizzing by, it's everywhere here. Like the entertainment industry abounds. And I knew that to just say, I'm going to make a movie is like, who isn't making a movie here? So how do I make sure that I'm making the right movie? So I set out to make a trailer first. So the first thing I did was I shot for like 2 days in New York and Philly, where I grew up, and put together sort of like a sampler of what I thought the documentary could be about. It was about 3 minutes. I hadn't filmed the entire thing yet. And then I sent it out to industry professionals and execs and people I knew at A&E and Netflix and just friends. And thinking that maybe they would say, oh, this is a really cool topic. Here's money. Not at all what happened. They did say, this is a really cool topic. You should do this. There was just no money there. So fine, the first checkbox of like viable topic, you have a proof of concept, people say go. It's not going to be a huge waste of time. So then was a crowdfunding. And money is obviously like an early stumbling block for any filmmaker, unless blessed in that way. But we froze for a second there. Did you hear me?
We're good. Yep. Keep going.
Okay, awesome. Just making sure. Yep. I wanted to make sure that we heard that, if you're born to a wealthy family, you're wonderful and lucky. But most of us aren't. And so fundraising was a big thing. I was lucky to do a couple rounds and meet my goal. And I raised that capital and filmed a lot in LA. So I still wasn't traveling anywhere. That felt like way too big. I did not raise that much money. Filmed for about 2.5 years in LA. Now I have a film, and I thought, again, it was just going to be about interfaith marriage. I was going to be chronicling my journey to my sister's wedding. And maybe a part of me was like sensational about it. Maybe she wouldn't get married after all, or maybe by the time she got to her wedding, I would figure things out. Well, the wedding, spoiler alert, came and went. She got married. Movie still in about its first act. And that's when I hit that sort of wall. And I realized the movie wasn't progressing. There was no catharsis. There was no hero's journey into the second act. Like, what was that? What is happening? And that's when I sort of took a beat and did other things like this, kind of had a survival job. I was producing for other people. I was working for several influencers and helping them make content. And American Birthright was like the baby that was on the back burner. And I when you put your passion project on the back burner for, even if I think it was probably like half a year, it was there. And I felt really terrible that I was neglecting it. And at some point I had a conversation with a rabbi who was in town, and someone's like, oh, you got to connect with him. And I told him about it. And he's like, oh, I saw the trailer. It's amazing. What are you doing? And I think for any filmmaker, especially early on, when someone says, that's really amazing, good for you, do it. And I do that all the time to other creatives now with honesty, right? I mean, if someone told me like, this isn't a good idea, I probably would have also followed that. But this is great. He pumped energy and life back into that project. And he suggested that I meet with a writer, a famous writer, Michael Borokow. Michael Borokow has written on Friends, Malcolm in the Middle, like big TV shows. I took a meeting with him and he said, this film is really exceptional. And I think you have an opportunity. You're at a crossroads. You could either continue to make it what it is, and it's like fun and vanilla, and you make a cool piece about a snapshot, about a story, or you go on a deeper spiritual quest. And that was the other turn. Because I had some of that now. It's about, what is the movie really about? And that was that other turn. That took me for about 5 months to Israel. And that was funded as well by a donor, which was amazing. I mean, I got just, again, blessed. And that was that next year. So we had about 2.5 years. That next year was about 3.5. Then I came back with a ton of footage, sat back down with my production partner and said, Erin, we have over 100 hours of content. Holy, what do we do? She's like, we start watching and doing this. And so we sat down into post. I raised money, our final push for post-production, took off work. We sat there, nearly lost our minds trying to piece together this escape room of a film. We probably had 7 iterations of the film before we arrived at this one, but that was that last leg. And post took us about 2.5 years through various stages of editing, of my life changing. I got engaged and we said, oh, let's tack that on. And then, you know, something else happened. We're like, oh, let's film that and put that in. And someone gives us a note and we're like, oh, that's a really good note. Oh, shoot. I think we're going back into post. So there was a lot of sculpting and chiseling away until we got to our current film. And then the decision that was it happened last year, mid last year. And that was it. We polished it. We sent it off to final color and sound and the score. And that all happened at the beginning of this year. As I gave birth to my baby, I actually had a baby in the process of birthing this 6-year-old, you know, baby. And here we are. So yeah, it's a journey. It was a journey.
Well, yeah, it sure sounds like one. And when you're talking about, you know, 100 hours of film to go through and, you know, over 2 years to, you know, do post work and finally get to where you want it. And when you look back at it now, and every creative's always thinking, well, maybe we could have done something a little bit different with anything that they do. Do you ever look back at it and think that maybe there could have been a little bit more footage added to the film?
Oh man, I would have done so many things differently. I was not a producer as much as I am now. I did not know about film as much as I do now. I mean, we had the level of cinematography and the sound people that I didn't have access to as much as I do now. And so I am both really impressed with myself for what I was able to do with my minimal resources over the course of 6 years and the budget that I stretched over that time. Like that to me is like the biggest exercise in scrappy production and heart and passion. But yeah, I would love to have been even more invested in creating vlog type content. I look at it now and I'm like, oh, there could have been more process. There could have been more here. But you know, a creative's never super pleased or fully pleased with their creation. It's like you can always find a typo in a book. You can always find an extra brush stroke you can, you know, put on that canvas. So I am really pleased with where it's at. It is a snapshot into who I was and how I presented as a person, as a producer, as a director during that last 6 years of my life. And the content I'm creating now is very different. But I think that's the beauty of film. That's the beauty of creating art, is that it shows you. And it really like makes that you know, and I say this in like the weirdest, fluffiest way, but I think filmmaking is really just like a self-development course disguised by this art of making a movie. Like I made a movie, but I really made this next iteration of myself. And I get to always watch it and remember that and inspire other people to hopefully do that same thing. So yeah, tons I would change, tons I would add, things that I look at now and I'm like, oh my God, what was I thinking? But also equally, you know, it's like when you look back at your 20s, you look at photos you posted and the things you were doing, you're like, what the hell? But there's a fondness and a nostalgia at the same time.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. I can say the same thing about when I mentioned pre-show that I started doing these virtual interviews back in May. And if I go look at some of those early ones, like, oh my gosh.
Right? You're so much stronger and like rooted now in who you are and how you are. But it's I'm sure it's also not as bad as you think it is.
Depends on the day.
Okay, fair enough.
but I understand your point. And part of it too really is so that I can look at something too and kind of feel good about where I came from and how I got here, because you know everyone starts somewhere. And that's what I had at that time. So the interview skills were there, but in terms of me presenting, you know, virtually, I'm looking the wrong way and I'm scratching on the mic and all kinds of goofy things. And you know, eventually I sorted that stuff out. But I was curious too, Becky, where did the film first premiere?
So it's not this Seattle's its first ever showing anywhere.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So tomorrow is the first time that people can actually see this movie in its entirety anywhere. I've had, you know, very, very tiny insular screenings for our crew. But yeah, this hasn't been seen by anyone. So I'm very, very excited to start getting that feedback. We're already getting feedback from other festivals as well. People are very excited about it. And it's been really cool. It's been cool to get into Jewish film festivals and also non-Jewish film festivals. As I told you, to me, the concern was, is this really only a Jewish piece? And the festival reactions is that, no, it's not. So I'm really excited to continue to share this. I think the final stage of any artist is that sort of connection with the audience. So the circuit has been completed, that, you know, beginning initial idea. And now we're finally getting to share it with eyeballs that, you know, haven't heard me have an existential crisis to them on the side. Like, this is real and out in the open, and I'm so stoked for people to see it.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm so happy to hear that the film festival here in Seattle is going to be basically the premiere of this. And I know everyone, again, just for that information, if you go to SeattleJewishFilmFestival.org, that's one word, you can purchase your tickets to see it starting tomorrow the 10th, and that goes all the way through the 13th. And I'm just also curious, Becky, so what do you have coming up? I know you're busy with family and all that, but on the work side of things, what else is coming up?
Yeah, so my husband and I have a production company that funny enough, I was working for an influencer here in LA, his global media company, and I left right at the beginning of the pandemic, and my husband and I started Manifest Media. And to us, it was the perfect time to start creating conscious content for people, because digital, I mean, it's something we had always said, content is king. Digital is the new frontier. Everyone should be making content. How can we help people and be of service in helping them create their own content? And we have been the busiest we've ever been. We are currently producing a series, a 10-episode mini-series around different values. So we're 6 episodes shot, 4 more to go. We have a music video that we're producing this month. We have a short film that we're producing for a client next month, a couple promos and fitness videos. So like, lots of fun stuff that people are coming to us to create. And also, this is new news. So just in the spirit of like first time tomorrow, the film, I'll share with you our news is that we thought we'd be able to live in this house for a little bit longer. We found out that we actually have to leave. The house is not livable. There's mold and all this huge, terrible, terrible stuff. But silver linings, as we said, we decided we're going to pack up the house, put it into storage, buy an RV, and live on the road for a bit. We've been rooted here for such a long time, and we haven't really been able to see our family. I haven't seen my mom since I got pregnant. So she hasn't seen me pregnant or has seen my baby. So we're going to drive over to Philly in the RV, document the journey, hopefully see some beautiful sights along the way, and live on the road for a bit.
Oh, wow. That isn't silver lining. That sounds exciting that you're taking something that, is obviously not a good situation with mold inside of a home.
No.
And turning that around into, this is going to be a new adventure for us then.
That's it. I feel like that's maybe just the MO that I have is, try to make something good out of the circumstance, even if it's a tricky one. Everyone likes to have rooting. Not everyone. Many people like to have rooting. But now I'm finding a lot of these nomads, and especially the RV culture this year because of COVID is so strong. Everyone's sort of finding new ways to be and moving from places that they thought they'd be living in forever. So I'm excited to test my comfort zone and to test my own limits and to see how we survive in a small RV, the 3 of us with a soon-to-be 5-month-old, but it'll be fun.
And is this purely personal, meaning that are you going to do anything in terms of, like you mentioned something about documenting, are you actually going to maybe document this for a future project?
Maybe. I'm always kind of documenting for a future project. I'm tinkering with a few other topics that we're wanting to pursue and kind of seeing which one wants to be made right now. This could be that. It could also be short form. I started a TikTok. That's a thing that people do. I finally bit the bullet and said I'm going to do a TikTok, and I'm chronicling the journey of from home to RV with our small family there. In terms of a film, I think we'll see. I've been getting some feedback as I've been telling people, and finally on my social media, I told people we're going to be moving to an RV. They said it's totally your next movie. I'm not sure, but I wasn't sure that American Birthright would be what it was either. So maybe, Mark. I mean, this is like our live writer's room. Who knows? Maybe.
Okay. Well, and it makes sense that it's like the idea is there. Whether it becomes something that you actually pushed into another level is, remains to be seen. But at least it's like you're probably always thinking about different angles on different things that you're doing in any aspect of your life.
Totally.
Kind
you
of
know me well.
I think it's what creatives do.
It's the lens we look through. Totally. I'm always like, this could be content. This could be this. And absolutely. You're totally right.
Yeah. Well, Becky, again, thank you so much for taking the time and for also putting yourself out there making this film, because it is a real personal film, and some people wouldn't, as you mentioned, you weren't necessarily comfortable with certain aspects of this film getting out there. But I'm so glad that you decided to make it the way that you did and that it's out there for everybody to see. And again, just to help plug it, SeattleJewishFilmFestival.org. you can buy your tickets now. You can see the first screening tomorrow on the 10th. And then, Becky, I also believe, just to help plug, do you have a Zoom conversation coming up on Thursday with some folks?
I do. I have a live Q&A. I believe it's at 7 p.m. Pacific.
Okay.
So, yeah, it'll be great.
Awesome. So then you can get some direct feedback from the folks viewing it and everyone else. And I have a feeling you're going to get some similar feedback to what I gave you about that. It's really a film that's going to connect with a lot of people, and it's going to connect from different areas too. That's what's so nice about it. It's very broad in that sense, but it's also very, very personal and distinct in another sense.
Thank you, Mark. That means it really does mean so much, and I'm very excited to hear what people feel and get from it, and hopefully they're inspired to continue to plug away at their own journeys and find their own truth.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Becky, thank you so much for taking the time, and I wish you and your husband and your daughter, to stay safe, and especially on your travels across the nation to get over to the East Coast.
Thank you. We'll have to update you at some point. We'll do this again.
Yeah, I would absolutely love to do that kind of thing. And I was also going to mention, you mentioned the projects that you're working on. If there's anything else coming up that you'd like to update or just kind of talk about where you're at with things, I would love to connect again virtually.
Awesome.
Awesome.
We're family now, so I will definitely be keeping you posted. And I'm excited to connect with more and more of your listeners and viewers. And of course, I'm here if anyone wants to create content or is eager to learn more about content or just wants to watch the film. My social media is my name, Becky Tahel. So it's BECKYTAHEL on Instagram, on now TikTok, on Facebook. And it's super, super grateful, Mark, for the platform and the time. Thank you.
Thank you. And have a good afternoon, a good evening, and stay safe down there.
You too. Bye.
Bye.